Hey guys, so I just want to make a quickie here talking about the evolution of the Aq40 speedrun meta that we're seeing on Fresh. We talked about it a couple times so far, and this is the week after the new record that is pretty incredible in terms of the pace compared to what we were seeing back in 2019, 2020. And that's what I want to continue to talk about is that evolution. So I've talked about how the dream of having Death Wish for both of these packs, it just doesn't really seem like that's going to be possible. Um, Talking about the optimization of this first area to me isn't the main focus. The thing that I want to spend this video on is the first brick, right? The first area where things really can go south. And of course, in a speed run, anything can go south at any point. That's kind of the craziness, right? But the reality is, a lot of the speed run in AQ40 is relatively safe. This feels scary where like one or two people can die. And if you were a lesser quality raid, your whole raid might die here if you do this strategy where they just absolutely blow up the real ones and ignore the fakes. But they have an insane amount of damage in this raid, and they can just kind of ignore a lot of the mechanics. And there's some really good love fools and dummies, and they have so many defensive consumables, all that kind of stuff, right? What I want to focus on is this part here. And I will say I was right just off the bat where the cooldown usage has changed here. What you're going to see now is all of the warriors are going to be using their diamond flask in this area for improved healing. The challenge that these guys have is the raid splits up. When the raid splits up, about half of the healing core goes with the main tank and the mage, and they do a giga pull off on the side. So while that's happening, the rest of the raid has much less healing resources to work with. So you're seeing here they all have their rank 14 healing weapons on. They're all going to use their D-Flask as they go down here. They snowball, so only like Tetsu and three other people take damage. Very impressive as far as like the optimization that you see up to this point. But this is where things now fall apart. So this first pack, they kill that skull mob quick enough. This next pack, though, the way it charges in, it sets them up for disaster. If they had just finished this up mob off slightly sooner, like half a second here, I don't think that charge would have happened. And this charge then set them up for just back-to-back crazy encounters here. And my thought is that you see some of the mobs evade for a second here, and I don't understand where the rest of these mobs come from. This to me is the real question mark that I don't understand, and I don't have that insight into this raid group to understand. Like, I'm assuming it's a reset, but the fact that there's three of them that come at them is insane. Like, I thought it was only two in this room, right? That's my understanding. Where'd the third one come from? So, yeah, just kind of incredible that they were able to pull this off as clean as they were, but obviously losing a priest early on then set them up for one or two other deaths because they just can't keep up with heals. But when you can't keep up with heals, that's why you need to have more self-reliance, and you need to have a raid group that can keep themselves alive. So I thought Kobe did a really good job here in general. And they used Mighty Rage. So to me, that's the big focus here is the potion usage and just general consumable usage. So you see off the bat, Kobe runs in and Mighty Rages pretty early here and just blasts, right? Puts out a lot of damage from that. I would recommend that there's two things that this raid still needs to do better. You see, Kobe is using elixir of poison resistance. That's the word I'm trying to say. It does seem like, in theory, most of this damage is all getting soaked because they have nature protection potions on. So we'll have to see how much like nature damage they actually take in this area. But at this point, like the nature potion's off and these guys are all just ticking down, right? So that's a big thing to me is making sure that the entire raid is using elixir poison resistance if you are stuck in a terrible situation like this. Ideally, if you're just doing bug trio, then it doesn't matter as much. Kree dies fast and it is what it is, right? But in this circumstance right here, it was really important to have everyone cleanse their poisons faster. The fact that Bug Trio reset, though, already does kind of scuff the run. The way that these mobs reset, it's already kind of a scuffed run, right? So I think in general, positioning is really important. Killing this first pack or completely ignoring it. Once the Brainwasher dies, you don't touch those three Guardians at all. You gather the Guardians with the other Guardians, you bring them all, and then you just blast them all down. Maybe? I don't know. Um, right now, it just feels like the slow trickle, if they do get this charge like that, that's the death sentence. This charge right here, where this pack comes in, it just set them up for disaster. Maybe more dummies. I see a couple dummies go down. I just feel like I've seen sometimes where very, very little raid damage goes out, and some other times where it is just an insane amount of raid damage. And if they hadn't had these mobs reset, maybe it would have been like super safe, right? Like at this point, it looks like a fine situation that's going on. They grab the other pack, but then suddenly I just don't know where these mobs come from. But let's just look at the logs now. So again, I want to point out Cure Poison, so we're just going to look at how many people did use Cure Poison. A lot of the warriors, but not everyone, right? Some people didn't. How many people used Invulnerability? Not many at all. That's a lip. How many people used a Health Stone? Or a Healing Potion, I should say. So 5 people used a Healing Potion, and this to me doesn't make a whole ton of sense when you start looking at the damage taken. So we're looking at the damage taken for this area here. It's a little bit confusing with the fact that this Maddox guy, he's on the side pole, right? So he's taken a whole ton of damage. But let's look at everyone else's damage here. Um, again, he's just, when the knockback happens, they do this Impale. So what's happening here is this Impale is just over and over blasting this raid. My recommendation is that everyone should be ready to lip once they get 3 stacks of the bleed. That is going to drastically reduce the amount of damage taken in a circumstance like this. Maybe you don't need to do that, and then you can save your potion cooldown and Mighty Rage, that kind of stuff. But to me, this is the first area where the run really gets bricked, and the key for survival in this area is survival, right? Using that lip. Um, because lots of these guys are using target dummies, they aren't able to use a health stone. I don't think that there's really value to be using Judgment of Light on any of these mobs until you get to the boss here. On Bug Trio, there might be some value for Judgment of Light. At the same time, it's kind of tough because this X mob does a fear. So they all Death Wish at the start here. Good kick. But yeah, it's just kind of tough. Once X dies, then you can Judgment of Light the last one, I guess, really safely. But I guess if you had Fear Words on the entire raid to start, that would be beneficial. Then the Paladin could ideally run in once or twice. If there was the first Paladin, the second Paladin doing Judgment or something, I don't know. More opportunities there for healing to be gained. But again, I just want to look at taken from ability here in this area. It's like only Impale. It's all Impale damage that these guys are taking. Oh no, it's not. Um, vast majority. So a little bit of poison, a little bit of fall damage, but ideally you guys are using snowballs for this, so it shouldn't be a whole ton of fall damage. It all comes down to this Impale. And once you get 3 stacks, you need to be able to remove it. So something to think about, Paladins could use Blessing of Protection on people if they don't use lips, but to me that's the big takeaway. Because if we look at the healing here, again, they're all using their D-Flask at this point, and they're getting pretty good value from it. The D-Flask is ticking. It's doing more healing overall than nearly the priests are. Kind of crazy. I mean, it is definitely doing more because most of these guys are healing Maddox. So the D-Flask is doing most of the heavy work. Anyways, I'm going to start getting in the weeds if I don't stop. I think that kind of summarizes it, right? Just a couple things can change and potentially this run could be a lot better. GG's.